We only raised 5 million. We were so afraid that this deal would disappear. We have to sell the company because it's very hard for us mentally.
Did you feel that founder burden be lift off your shoulders after the acquisition?
We wanted to realize the value of what we've built. If you don't build a company that's big enough and fast enough, then you won't survive.
What gave you the bug to go back out and start something new again?
We're close to quitting because of the stress. You compete with Google and Facebook, and they have first-party data. The whole advertising ecosystem is completely messed up. When you're a first-time founder, if your dream is to sell your company, you have to understand.
Yeah, pretty much what I talk about on this podcast is predominantly like the deal experience. I call it PTSD for me and my past transactions. It's just like the stress you go through. It's, getting everything finalized and get transactions done. Those are kind of the things that really resonate with the audience and, kind of stick with people, are those personal stories. Most people tend to try to gloss over, I raised $100 million. And then we did this. And it's like, whoa, it's a big deal. Let's talk about it.
No, I mean, I really like to talk about how I personally experienced this. I had some, a lot of mental issues, right, around anxiety attacks and, stress and these things that I actually like to talk about these things because I think people don't talk about these things enough.
They do not. So we always have to puff our chest and say everything's fine. But it's like that picture of the guy sitting at the table, everything's on fire. I was like, everything's fine.
This is fine. Yeah.
Don't look at this. It's okay. So Crosswise was a previous company to Oracle. How much did you raise for Crosswise?
I raised a total of $5 million, 2 in the seed round, and then another 3.
And with Sentra, we'll talk about like why you did Sentra after Oracle and all that kind of stuff. And then just to confirm, you closed a $50 million Series B like just a couple months ago, right? Like this year.
Yes, correct.
And for a total of over 100.
Correct.
Awesome. So those are just like the stats I don't want to like mess up when,
Yep.
When you realized Oracle was about to buy you, like, what were you going through? Why were you selling? What was the decision making going through your head? And that's kind of how I usually start. And then we'll start unwinding your background as we go along and kind of your angel investing and other stuff from there.
So I think the first thing that happened when we realized that Oracle wants to buy us is that we understood that it's the right time to get a banker. And at the time, the only reason that we knew that it's an option is because people have reached out to us and offered their services. And we were very young at the time. I was only 28, 29. My co-founder was 30. We had another co-founder who was, I think, 35 at the time, 36. And we had a rough time. I mean, it was scary, right? We had some close encounters with, almost, running out of capital, and we got our main data source shut down at some point. So Crosswise, what we basically built is technology to identify people across their devices, and you have to have a lot of data for that. So we had some close, near-death experiences there. So we really wanted to sell, right? We wanted to realize the value of what we've built, and we almost couldn't believe, that we built something that has value, right? We kind of had this notion that if someone, we're kind of close to quitting because of the stress, and if we quit, then everything disappears, right? That's what you feel when you're a founder, right? And it's a constant feel. It's just something that, maybe it's some sort of mental disorder, I guess, right? It's like imposter syndrome of some sort. It's like you don't really believe that what you've built is worth tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, right? It's kind of hard to believe. And at the same time, you're expected to act like it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So, and I think all founders have this feeling, right? When there's like this gap between what they're expected to behave like across, in front of people, in front of customers, in front of the board, in front of the market, versus what they feel internally. And it's a gap that every founder has to manage and has to control. And sometimes it's real, right? Sometimes you have to fake it until you make it. Sometimes it's not real. Sometimes you've actually built something that has value. And what I think what I really kind of missed in the journey is that, if I quit today, I still built something, right? Something. It's not everything about just me, right? And that's the scary part when you start start a company, and that's why selling a company once you get an offer is so desirable, right? It's a way for you to check out, to exit, right? To reduce the risk, to stop for a second and say, okay, I actually built something. Now I can continue. Whereas when you sell your company, you don't actually continue, right? You end it.
It's amazing you bring this up in the context that you do when it comes to the exit experience. You're talking about like there's this huge burden on your shoulders. You realize that selling was in your best interest, which I want to go back to in a moment. But then when you sell, so in your case, Oracle ends up acquiring, and you spend several years with Oracle after the fact. Did you feel that kind of founder burden be lift off your shoulders after the acquisition?
Of course, I was a free man after the acquisition. I think it's not only about the money. I think it's about the responsibility. You can drop the pen, right? You cannot do it while the company is yours. And I'm a person, I actually like being managed, right? I mean, it's very the your life becomes much easier because there's expectations, you can manage them. When you're a founder of a startup, you manage the expectations in front of the employees and the market, right? You have to set the tone. There's no such thing as knowing, like there's never a day that you wake up and you can tell yourself, okay, I'm doing well because I am meeting the expectations of my board or my no, because tomorrow morning a new startup can come up and destroy your company, and it will be your fault because you didn't think it through, because you didn't realize that this is something that could happen.
It's so painful. I sometimes when I do this podcast, I get like PTSD of moments where I'm just like, oh, like those moments where you're in the trenches and you got to make 1,000 decisions a day, and ultimately it's like only really one decision leads to like the outcomes or like the big shifts, but there's still just people pulling in a million different directions, asking for different things. And it adds up. So I can totally resonate with you on the desire to be managed as opposed to be the one setting expectations. When it comes to Crosswise, you sold the company. I think it was in 2016, I believe, originally.
Yes.
But you raised about 5 million. So you had some like VC expectations. What was kind of like, you walked us through kind of why you sold, but like walk us through the process. So you started getting inbound from bankers, and then I imagine you ran a process. So like kind of walk us through that experience.
So I think, and again, I mean, the constant feeling that all of the founders had is that we have to sell the company because it's very hard for us mentally, right? So when the Oracle opportunity came, so basically what happened, I mean, I'll give some background. So there was this a new business unit that was being built inside of Oracle called Oracle Data Cloud, then became Oracle Marketing, Oracle Advertising. It was adjacent to Oracle Marketing Cloud. And it was very focused on Adtech, advertising technology. And it started out with a big acquisition of a company called Data Logics for, I think, over $1 billion, and then moved on to another acquisition of a company called Blue Kai for a few $100 million. And then they had basically a strategy of building kind of the largest data provider for advertising, and not only advertising, but it kind of like started out this way from a financial perspective, but the strategy was to build this world's best Adtech company. And for doing that, you have to have cross-device technology. Um, but there were a few in the market. I think we had the best technology at the time. It was actually proven by Oracle. It was actually proven by Datalogics, which was the company that Oracle acquired and then became Oracle. So they actually POC'd us against other vendors. And we were not only the best, we were also the cheapest, right? I mean, if you think about it, we only raised 5 million at the time. It was a reasonable amount of time. Today, it's like what we burn in a month. But it is what it is. So we had and so we had good technology, and Oracle basically expressed interest in us, right? They didn't say we want to buy you tomorrow. They didn't give us a term sheet. They just said, well, we want to buy you. I mean, we don't know exactly when. It's something that is interesting for us, right? Um, I mean, they didn't say it exactly that way, but you know what I mean. And then that was I think September of 2015. So me and my two founders basically sat in the room, and then we said, okay, Oracle wants to buy us. What do we do? And by the way, it's actually the second time that we got an offer. The first time we got an offer was another company that also wanted to buy us. I won't mention their name, but they're also in the Adtech space, and they wanted to buy us for like I think 25 million or something of that sort. So we weren't really interested in that option because we thought it was too low. Actually, it was even a bit less than that. So when the Oracle acquisition opportunity came, so we realized Oracle has a lot of money and they have a very strong strategy around that. So what we did is we said, okay, we have this, we're going to sell the company. That was the decision, and to make that decision happen, you can't tell Oracle, you need to buy us right now, right? Because you have to have some sort of leverage, right? So if you want something to happen, what do, right? So the bankers came in and said, we're going to sell you, right? We're going to find competing opportunities. We're going to find more companies that will want to buy you. And maybe there's going to be a bidding war, but eventually at the end of the day, we will sell you and we have financial interest to do it, right? So we signed the bankers, and we were also very inexperienced with the process, so we really needed someone to take that off our backs, right? Especially the fact that a banker actually represents the board and not the founders, right? It actually makes it much easier for the founders and the CEO to negotiate both between the board members and the founders and the company that wants to acquire us. So that's what we did. It was very fruitful because I think about a month later, they brought in a competitor. We actually took a flight there, and we met the team. They were very excited. They actually gave us an offer, and then the bankers basically suggested to take that offer and give it back to Oracle. It took Oracle 3 days to come up with a term sheet, and that was very exciting. We realized that we can continue this. We had a board meeting, and we could have for sure continued this, but we were so afraid that this deal would disappear that we just said yes to the first up, the low ball, right? They basically gave, at the end of the day, it was about 50 million. So it wasn't that, I mean, it's still a lot of money, right? Especially when you only raise 5. So it was okay. But what I do remember is how, and like, we were really inconfident with what we built. Like, we felt that what we built is worth nothing. So if something is worth nothing, why let's just get anything, right? I mean, I'm just
What did
telling
your
you
bankers say in that situation when you kind of just took that first offer
they
from?
they there was this agreement in the board. Like our VCs wanted us to negotiate, and we were afraid. We said no, we want to take it, and the bankers said okay. I mean, the bankers eventually have to agree with what the board says, and since we're still control the board, it wasn't even a question. It was, and again, at the end of the day, those VCs, they don't want to go against the founders. They never want to go against the founders unless they think that the founders need to move, right? Um, so they really didn't have an option. So we just sold it, right? Like if I look at it, if I go back and would have we done something differently? I don't know. How I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know because you never know. These things usually, I mean, I constantly hear about stories. Just recently I've heard a very sad story around, a CEO acting with a lot of ego, and that basically broke the deal. Because the person just didn't want to buy him because of the person, right? Not because of the technology. He ended up buying a different competitor with technology that is, by far worse, because he just didn't want to talk to the founder anymore. So
Personalities matter when it comes to deal making. At the end of the day,
very much.
AI is overtaking the world. Deals still happen between humans. So when this was going on, what was that offer? If you don't have to share like who, but that first you got a first offer to kind of like, all right, this is the not serious offer, 25 million, whatever. What was that second offer that you got from the competitor?
It was around 30 plus,
Okay. So
32,
Oracle
33.
came in with a serious premium on that. So I can see why you felt and like you had the relationship. And this is something I love to kind of point out to the audience. Like this is how a lot of deals get done. It's like POCs with large enterprise companies, and they ran a process themselves. Oracle did with multiple different vendors, chose you, and so they were eager to do a deal. It just had to be a catalyst. And bankers create catalysts because they're like, gosh, now they're serious. They're bringing in outside help. We gotta, try to end this quickly. And yeah, you never know. You go back, push, something changes. You just never know what happens. It happened to us when my first transaction was supposed to be Samsung was supposed to buy my company, and my board got greedy, not us. Like our chairman went around our back and tried to renegotiate the deal that we were all very happy about because we were doing everything under the right. And he came back, pushed back, and then the time that they had to go back and reconsider, about a week or two, Samsung's CEO went to prison.
Oh, wow.
Just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, you can't.
Oh my God.
So
So in your case, I think it's actually easier because what happened with the board didn't reflect on your personality as a founder, right? Because when the acquiring company buys your company, they buy you, but they said like they don't buy the investor, they buy them out, right? So that's actually something. I mean, I would prefer that would happen to me versus the other way around. But of course, and you don't want to have the deal at risk. That's for sure a problem. I think the way you want to have a deal like that happen is like you as a CEO want to come to the acquirer and say, "Listen, I want this. I'm dying to take this deal that you gave me, right? I'm truly honored. I'm and humbled by it." But my board doesn't. This won't fly with the board, right? Like this is not something I can take to the board. Like you have to understand, it's not because of me; it's because of my investors, right? You kind of want to do that, regardless of what you think, right? You can do it because this is what you think, or because you want more. But you have to say these words when you want to raise your offer. Like you can't say. I mean, you can, but you probably shouldn't say something like, dude, I'm worth more than that. I'm sorry. You have to go and give me a better offer. Like, because if you do that, it doesn't sound good, right?
yeah, it doesn't. It comes off ego, and then it's like sometimes that's a final and best, and you don't know, or if you don't have a leverage. Again, it all comes down to leverage and deal making. And it sounds like your bankers were just getting started. Maybe there could have been more leverage. There could have been other opportunities to push Oracle up. Um, but at that point, like you guys, like it's really like you're. It's something I look at in founders all the time is the stamina. Like, does the founding team have the stamina to put up with what comes with them saying no and having to go through another year or two of grind? And what happens that year or two? I mean, the mental load and the stress that comes with that. And that's like some founders that have the ego totally have that and they're fine. And then others that are like, concerned about potential, purchases, maybe like you were feeling like you didn't feel like you had everything perfect. You felt the value was zero. So 50 million sounds great. So it's just dealing with the psychology of the deal making is what makes deal making so unique. And
Yeah.
all the different
I
structures.
and I think the acquirers know and they smell blood, right? If they see that either you're running out of cash or stamina, some people call it grit, right? uh is they'll give you an offer, a low offer, and they'll know you'll take it. But like if you are really confident in what you've built, right? And you get more deals on the table, then obviously eventually at the end of the day, if the deal doesn't go through, then nothing bad happens, right? If it does go through, then great, right? You have the deal and everyone's happy. So it's definitely something that when you go into an acquisition, you have to come strong, both mentally and financially.
Real quick, if you're a founder doing over 5 million in revenue and want to know what the best $100 million plus founders are doing to fuel their growth, then make sure to subscribe to our $100 million exits newsletter. Get the playbooks that are proven on how to fund, grow, and sell your business. I'll even give you a curated list of investors that want to invest in your business. It's totally free. All you have to do is click that link down below. Subscribe, do it now. I promise it's worth it. You won't regret it. You got nothing to lose. Go ahead, subscribe now. Back to the show.
So you sold the company. Was there a kind of retention agreement or, golden handcuffs that you had to stay for X amount of years? Or were you like, all cash, goodbye if you want to, stay if you want to?
Yeah, so we had a 2-year holdback and a 4-year RSU plan. And I stayed the whole 4 years and quit basically the day after I finished my vesting. So yes, it's usually the case, right? I mean, it's usually between 2 and 4 years for kind of R&D type roles, and sometimes for go-to-market roles, they could be less than that, because in most cases, in most acquisitions, right? I think 90%. I would say, I'm not sure if that's the real number, but if I had to guess that number, in 90% of the acquisitions, the acquirer buys the people and the technology and the product, right? They don't buy the business usually, right? They don't, usually the business comes from the acquiring, the acquirer, because if they buy your company, they usually have an existing business and they can capitalize on your existing go-to-market team to sell your product, right? In some cases, Wiz, for example, that's a very good example because that's a huge acquisition. They bought the whole business, right? They bought the go-to-market team as well. There's another example, I don't know, in cybersecurity that people might have heard about, which is Perimeter 81 that was acquired by Checkpoint for $500 million. And in some cases, you actually buy the business, but in most cases, especially with cybersecurity companies that already have a very developed go-to-market, they just want to buy your product and sell it, right? Sometimes even not that. Sometimes they just want your technology integrated into an existing product, which they already sell.
What was Crosswise's revenue when you guys sold?
It was actually pretty high compared to how much we sold. It was $4 million ARR. It was, and the reason it was high is because the deals that we had are enterprise deals, and we had a product that is very rare in the market, right? So there was only basically one competitor that could provide the same service, and the reason that was the case is because we actually chose a problem that had a very small market. That was our thesis for why we should sell, by the way, because if we had a small market, even though we had a lot of revenue, we probably captured like 20-30% of the market by then, right? We had to go and find other business. So at the time, our biggest competitor, they were named Drawbridge. They realized that, and because they were funded by Sequoia, then Sequoia had high expectations from them. So they basically forced them to become something called a DSP, a provider of basically advertising services. And that business has way worse margins, and it's very hard. It's very hard because you compete with Google and Facebook, and they have first party data, right? The whole advertising ecosystem is completely messed up because of Facebook and Google. And by the way, all the limitations and the issues around third-party cookies and advertising IDs that have been recently been basically frowned upon, and because of that, there's a lot of issues around GDPR, privacy, right? All those issues kind of made tracking impossible, and that actually created a situation where Google and Facebook are monopolies in that field, right?
It was like 80% of the entire ad market or something like that.
Yeah, even more, I think. Yeah, and so that's kind of in that sense, I think we did good to the world. But and what happened actually after the acquisition was that's something that I was actually glad in hindsight that we sold the company early, because what happened in 2016 is that people started talking about GDPR, and in 2018 GDPR basically came into effect, and GDPR killed my business completely, right? Because what we did was based on tracking. So it was a very good decision to sell early. And we only had the company for 2 years. And we only sold the product for 1 year. So we got to $4 billion of ARR in 1 year sales.
Well, and that's why you get acquired for 50. Like you build something, you capitalized on it, and it's a hard decision to sell. But I think you acknowledging having the self-reflection of like how you're feeling about the business and everything, like allowed you to be able to accept an offer early. Or I imagine maybe your VCs are like, look at these numbers, everything's up into the right. Maybe you guys keep going or ask for more, and you're like, there's something at the around the corner we can't see that giving us a bad feeling. Let's pull the trigger now. Which it was a similar situation when I sold Liquid Sky to Walmart. We saw kind of like what was coming 12 to 18 months out, and we didn't have unlimited cash to fight it. And I was like, yeah, this sounds pretty good. Let's sell. So
yeah, and I think that in all startups, honestly, that happens. If you don't become a market leader in 5 or 6 years, you're dead, right? I mean, you have to go and either go big or go home. That's something that, and it makes sense because technology becomes commoditized, becomes irrelevant over time. New competitors always rise, and the market changes, right? So if you don't build a company that's big enough and fast enough, then you won't survive, because over time, these companies, they build a business and then they start adding more products and they change their strategy, right? So, and companies change. We had to go through the same process in Sentra, right? So we started with a product called DSPM, and then we were kind of forced to build a broad platform because the market has changed and people have more requirements, right? If a company wants to start and to compete with Sentra, they cannot compete with us directly on the same RFPs that we have, right? Because we have such a wide product today, then it's going to be very hard for a competitor to compete against us in that specific world, right? And it's true for everything, right? I mean, you won't start with competitor today because it would be extremely hard unless you have a very specific edge, new technology, a very strong why now thesis, right? Something that will make room for you in the market. That's what people mention a lot of times as blue ocean versus red ocean, right? Blue ocean is the market's wide open. Everyone's new to this product. Everyone wants it. That's a blue ocean. Red ocean is, where the market's full basically with competitors, and you have to replace an existing product to make your market, right? When in some cases it's actually easier when you have better technology because the budget line exists. And blue oceans, usually the budget line doesn't exist exactly as you want it to be to exist. And then what you want to do is you want to actually build it for the market, build it with the channels and market education. You want to make sure that people understand what you're building. You want to work with analysts. In cybersecurity, Gartner is very dominant, right? So you want to make sure to build maybe a new category in cybersecurity. Do you want to define what goes into this category?
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about kind of Sentra. So to kind of catch the audience up, you sold to Oracle, you spent many years at Oracle, and then despite kind of the prefer to be managed and kind of like the Oracle life, it looked like you did a bunch of angel investments during that time. What gave you the bug to go back out and start something new again? Well, what was kind of the catalyst for that?
Well, I mean, I woke up basically asking myself, what do I want to do when I grow up, right? Like after I quit. And so, and I think what happened was that I quickly got bored, right? So I started advising and angel investing more, and then I kind of found myself ideating, looking for ideas, building stuff because I'm also a coder, so I like to code myself. So I was building stuff, I was thinking about ideas, and then and naturally, people who want to start companies with me start talking to me. So I started working with my co-founder today, Yair. Um, and he also, I knew him from the military intelligence. We were both in the military intelligence, and we were working. We were not working together, but we were very good friends, right? So I really liked him, and I think one of the things that I realized, I started kind of adding a lot of theses, I would say. I mean, assumptions around what would make me happy. Um, so first of all, I think the most important thing that I've learned during my career is you want to make sure that if you start a company, you do it with your friends. You want to do it with your friends because you want to enjoy the process, right? You want, and it's fun when you do it with friends. And you also want to be able to resolve conflicts, right? So when you have friendship on the line, then you kind of are forced to resolve conflicts, right? Because a lot of the companies actually fail because of issues with, the people who don't really get along with each other. So I knew that, right? So, and then the question became, okay, what would make me happy as a person? It wasn't necessarily starting a company, and I had multiple ideas. One of the ideas that I had, so I do like to create products and I do like to create value. And I had this idea where I might, start several companies at once and advise them. Um, and that was an option, right? But then, over time, I think what I realized is that what I need to look for is something that would make me happy when I wake up and go to work and say, I am enjoying my work, right? As opposed to what I did with Crosswise, where it was mostly around, I was very goal oriented. I wanted to sell my company. I wanted to be this guy who exited his company, who everyone talks about. I was really looking for that fame and also the money, but like it wasn't. I don't think. I mean, I'm smart enough to understand that this is not the best way to make money, right? I know that there are better ways to make money on average than to create a company. So it was mostly around that, and so what I realized is that I need to rethink start a company because I did want to, and I didn't really know why, right? And then I kind of realized, okay, I need to find something that I genuinely enjoy doing. And so I thought about being a product manager, and I thought about being a CTO, and I thought about being a VP R&D, and I thought about all these things. And at the end of the day, what I realized is that I'm a person who really enjoys technology. I'm a person who really understands how to create value and how to sell. And these three things basically mean that I would probably well, I would probably enjoy being a CTO, right? And I knew that means giving up the CEO role, which is something I could have done, but it would have been basically it's not something I would enjoy doing because it would take me out of my comfort zone. I can explain why, but this is something I did speak about with my therapist, by the way. Like why being a CTO for me is much better than being a CEO. So I actually did a lot of thinking around what is my next role going to be, regardless of whether or not I'm starting a company. So after realizing that being a CTO of a company, it doesn't matter what, right? In product, it really means a lot what field you're actually working on. So enjoying product in cybersecurity is very different than enjoying product in Figma, right? These are two completely different things, right? Whereas being a CTO actually isn't too different than being the CTO of Figma and the CTO. I don't know if CTO, but definitely a VP R&D, right? Because the technology stack, I mean, usually is very, very similar in most companies nowadays, right? Cloud, backend, microservices, queues, Kubernetes, it's all kind of the same, right? Web applications,
Well,
React, TypeScript.
so I want to touch on one thing. You come to the realization of what role you should play. You have a background, you kind of know where you fit and play into. You start building with your friends. I want to kind of skip ahead a little bit. You guys raised, in my eyes, a monster seed round. Relatively quickly. Like, how did you? Well, one, let's start with why did you decide to raise a monster seed round, and how did you guys pull it off? What did you have already lined up? Was it just the right investor relationships? Was it initial traction or contracts or pride? What? How did you do that?
That's a great question. So first of all, I mean, why is pretty easy. What my general suggestion to founders when I advise companies is and raise as much as you can, okay, on the first round. Because on the first round you don't need to prove anything. So you might as well get as much money as you can. And you're probably going to sell your company in a valuation that's greater than your first round. So this is basically a classic market question, right? What is the market for you as founders when you are the product and the VCs are the buyer, right? The person who would pay the most, which means the most valuation, is the person that you should probably go with, right? There's no in the first round. You just need to get as much as you can. Later on, it becomes much more complicated, right? Because the next round, the more you raise money, the harder it is to acquire you. So if you actually want to be acquired, you might not want to go and get too much venture capital because
So I normally agree with this, but like you raised 23 million in your seed round, like shortly after inception, like a year or so. Like that's not just an outlier. That's like at the far end of the seed. That's less than probably 1% of seed rounds. So what was it being thrown at you? Was a bunch of people coming to you and say, "We'll give you 5." Another guy comes and says, "We'll give you 10." Others, customers like, "We'll give you 23." Like, how does that?
great question. Yeah. So first of all, it was 2021. Okay. So 2021 add 30% to everything, right? So today it would be 50. Or 20, I don't know. But the reason is because we were, at the end of the day, we were 4 founders, right? And we had a few things that were basically on our side. First of all, I was a second-time founder, highly appreciated in the industry. All of the investors basically know me in Israel. The second thing is that we had very two senior officials from the army, high-ranking commanders. One of them was the head of Unit 8200. That is a 10,000 people unit, right? That's the cybersecurity unit in Israel. And then the other thing that was really for us is that in Israel specifically is a factory for creating startups in cybersecurity, right? So because there's a lot of knowledge on how to create companies in cybersecurity, the risk is actually very low. So the rounds can be actually higher, right? So the combination of a good market, second-time founder in the mix, high-ranking officials in the army, and this deep expertise in cybersecurity in Israel made this possible. So we actually got the first offer we got was 20, and then we got it up to 23 because there was more demand than supply. But once you have demand for you as a product, meaning us four founders going to raise money. Once you have demand for that, then you can quickly realize your actual value. And that is true for acquisitions, by the way, as well, right? Once there's more than one person who wants to invest in you, you will get as much as you can. Yeah. So, and it does make sense financially. I mean, our first investors will make money regardless of what will happen, right?
I love the confidence. It's very sounds like a very different mindset in this business than it was with Crosswise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That goes back to my first comment. Remember?
Yeah, I think that's again, like stacking the deck, with the team, and then leveraging those relationships, kind of get the max value up, right? So what kind of because then it's like, all right, you have a bar, you have an expectation, you raise that kind of money that quickly, it's expected that you will continue to assemble the team, traction and whatnot. Like, what was the mark for the Series A and Series B? Like, what kind of momentum were you developing to where investors were like, all right, let's double down?
So for the first round was actually some people call it the FOMO round, right? It was a preemption. We haven't proven anything other than being able to hire people, and that is not something that you need to. Spending money is not something you need to prove, right? Yeah, so that's definitely not something. So we haven't proven anything by our A round. Our A round was very quick. I think it was 7 months after the first round. And it was just because we had a lot of interest, and the hype was strong even then, with us raising this big round. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy or a chicken and the egg, right? It's like, once you see a company that raised a lot of money, you probably want to invest in it more, right? Makes sense, doesn't it? I don't know.
DC logic sometimes confuses the rest of the world, but when they're in their bubble, it makes sense.
Exactly. And then so our last round was actually we had to have success, and we had success. So we raised it based on ARR, right? And we raised it based on product market fit. So the two things that the investor that did due diligence on us saw, and this is they said that, right? They checked with customers that acquired Sentra that basically they came to the conclusion that we have the best technology in the market. Again, that's what they told us. Maybe they're saying it because they want me to like them, right? But that's what they said. And also, when you look at our, what we tried to achieve in terms of revenue, so we actually overachieved our revenue numbers, and we were at a very good spot. And I think when you see these numbers, what you see is the numbers are still quite low compared to an actual company. We're still at the startup mode, and that's startup mode. What you want to do in a B round, or I guess that was a B round, right? What you want to look for in a B round is you want to look for product market fit, and you want to look for a healthy company, right? So a healthy company is a company that doesn't burn too much cash, but can generate revenue and achieve goals, revenue goals that make sense, and would eventually become a profitable company, right? But you also want to make sure that you invest in a company that really found pain and could really proved that they are solving that pain for the market, that there is a product to be sold, right? That's product market fit. And we had these two things. So we sold product market fit, we sold actual revenue and potential. And that's why our investors gave us $50 million, because they want us to get to the next level.
And is it competitively, like were there bigger competitors spending more or raising more that you did this to outcompete them, or you wanted to kind of make sure no one showed up and you raised as much as possible to deter players coming into the market?
So we are in a tricky market because it's a combination of an old market. For example, Veronis, they're in the high $600-700 million of ARR, publicly traded company. But then there's also Sierra, which are the new incumbent, which are directly competitors with Sentra. And by the time, when we raised the money, our last round, I think they raised up to $600 million. And I think now it's around $1 billion. So they are being, if you look at the cybersecurity ecosystem around our market, they have been kind of the amount of investment that have been done to them was probably around the thesis of, okay, if we will fund a good company with a lot of cash, they will outperform the competitors because they will hire 150, 200 reps, and at the same time build technology that would outperform everyone, right? With a lot of capital. So the thesis is already very strong in our market. And I think it's mostly a risk. It is risky for us, but what is for sure happening, and we can see it, is that no one is able to compete in our market today, right? It's basically set. The market is set. And we would need to basically prove that we can still outperform in some deals, if not all deals, right? Because at the end of the day, you can have more than one company sell a product, right? It's not that every market only has one strong competitor. Usually it's around 5 to 6. So
yeah. So I love hearing this story and just kind of how, because like there's just so many different ways to look at venture, and some it's everyone's so focused on traction, and looking back to look at forward projection. And I think what you guys did was kind of figured out that product market, figured out the narrative, the niche, and really hunkered down on that particular problem and got created the FOMO too. I think capitalizing the day of the early 2021, being able to capture those investors to come in and write a big check, that creates a snowball effect that allows more and more to kind of fall in line, get the better talent, get the better deals, get the better name recognition, which kind of forces you. And that's like kind of the Sequoia model in a lot of ways. It's like once Sequoia backs you with a huge check, it creates a snowball effect that everyone starts paying attention to you, which then affects, your ability to acquire market share. With you kind of like looking back at your experience from Crosswise to Sentra, and you made many, we didn't talk about this, but you made many investments into early stage startups, to which, I'm just skimming through your LinkedIn. It's like this company raised 50 million, that one raised 50 million, that one raised 100 million, that one raised 300 million. Like, now I'm sure that's not all your entire portfolio. They're all awesome hitters, but just kind of for fun to touch on that, like walk us through kind of your thought process of being an exited founder yourself and making bets on other founding teams. Like, what are you looking for in founding teams that you've now clearly shown that are, you pick some good ones that have some legs and are running?
thank you. Yeah, and those are only the ones that I can talk about, right? There's still the ones that are in stealth. And I think for me it's actually easy, because it's not that I have this amazing talent of, okay, I do have a good talent of being able to find people that I think will be successful, because usually what I do is I noticed that I have a way to find people who are smarter than me and who are more talented than me. Okay, that's something that it's actually hard to do. But I think when you're very modest and you're very and you basically interview hundreds of people, because that's what I basically did. Then you kind of realize how to really pick up when someone's very, very smart and very, very good at being a founder, right? So it's definitely something that I've done, and I know how to do, and I also have friends who help me do that because we kind of co-invest sometimes. So uh, I think experience is definitely something that helps. It's literally a model that you train in your brain, right? It's just like a machine learning model. Doesn't really have a way. I don't really have a way to explain it how it works, right? But honestly, and what I wanted to say earlier is that I do have an unfair advantage. So let's talk about Eon. Okay, Eon is the good example because to me, Eon is, I would say, the next Wiz in terms of how the Israeli ecosystem looks at it. Because Eon was founded by a friend of mine called Ophir, and Ophir probably is today known to be the best founder in Israel, right? If you would have to pick a founder, it would be him. Next to Asaf, right? From Wiz, the CEO of Wiz. I mean, the second best would be Ophir. I think that was my point. And when you look at people like Ophir, I mean, Ophir has a very good name in the ecosystem. He himself met over 500 um, companies. It's like he made more than investors. Maybe he made probably around 35. Um, and he's definitely a veteran in the industry, and literally everyone's wish is to invest in it, right? Because I'm his friend, right? He lets me invest in his company. So obviously, if I know that everyone wants to invest in Ophir, it doesn't really matter whether or not he'll be successful. I mean, although I do believe that he will be extremely successful, the problem becomes whether or not you can invest in this company
That
and not
you
who
can
to
get in.
invest in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get in the deal, right? Yeah, it was, I remember, I mean, Yinon is a very good friend of mine from the army. And Yinon was the co-founder and VP product. He still is a co-founder and VP product Wiz. And I basically begged him to let me buy his options when they were worth $1 billion, right? Because I honestly believe that they were the best company in the market. And I knew that I had to, be in that deal. But of course he didn't let me because it's hard to sell stock when you're a founder, right? But my point is that I have an unfair advantage when some of my friends, my best friends, are the best founders in the ecosystem because I'm 40. I have a lot of experience. I've kind of collected a lot of friends from the industry along my years, and Ophir was one of them, and definitely being able to invest in this company is what makes me money, right? And it is kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense. I mean, everyone wants to invest in him, so my stock is worth more because of that, right? It's not because he actually managed to do something yet, right?
I think it's once you have that win, imagine if you didn't sell Crosswise when you sold it, and maybe something didn't work out, and like how your networks and access would have changed or evolved, and like the compounding value that you'd then be able to create to have this optionality, this track record to kind of say, go out and do what you do at Sentra, and kind of getting that early win in your career opened up all of these doors. And you kind of said it on the call, like you had the intention to build something to sell to kind of get that access, that notoriety, and you made it happen. Not it's one thing to aspire to it, but to actually deliver on it is pretty amazing. So, Rob, before we wrap up here, if you just had one kind of takeaway or maybe something we didn't cover today that you want to share to founders out there that are looking at their next transaction, what would be your words to listen to them?
Well, by transaction, you mean M&A, or by transaction, you mean even raising money?
Those are transactions. This is how whatever you want to prioritize.
Oh, wow. Okay. I mean, I think what I can really help with, two things. First of all, when you raise money, as a first timer, um, but I have a good saying. A friend of mine, also an investor in Israel, he said something that I will never forget. He said that when you go and raise the money, like when you go and raise a seed round, and you say congrats to someone, it's like telling a chef that just managed to buy his groceries on the store congrats, because it doesn't mean anything. It literally means nothing.
You're just getting started.
Yeah, and you're just gonna start, and it's very true. And I think when you're a first time founder, don't get excited. Don't think that you've been successful if someone wants to invest in you. Think if this is the right thing for you as a person. Don't drive your decisions based on how much money you can raise, or from who you can raise, or what you need to think if this is right for you. You need to think of because you need to understand what you're doing. You're basically getting married with your co-founders and your investors. You want to make sure that you're working on something that you want to work on. You want to make sure that you are working with the people that you work with. You want to make sure that the people who invest in you can actually help you achieve that goal. And don't worry if you say no to an investor who wants to invest in you, because if he wants to invest, he will still want to invest in you in the future, and other people might want to also invest. So I wouldn't run and get the first check that I can get just because I'm afraid that I'll lose the opportunity. And for selling a company, I think my advice is, when companies get bought and not sold, okay, if your dream is to sell your company, you have to understand the market, and you have to have some statistical assumption that someone will buy you because he needs you, and you have to really build and base this assumption based on understanding your market, right? And don't try to just assume that people will buy you. Never build a company in a way that assumes that people will buy you, because that will actually create the opposite. That will create a situation where people would realize that they can buy you for cheap. A good example would be not raising another round because you want to keep your valuation low, and then getting to a situation where you don't have enough money, and then you get bought for nothing, right? So always think about that fact, and you should build a company that its number one goal is to generate revenue, and not to generate a company that is on the shelf for someone to buy.
I think it's wise and sage advice. Ron, I really appreciate you coming on the show with us today and sharing the story, sharing the kind of intimate moments of the stress that you went through in the first company, and how you let a very different outcome for Sentra thus far. So looking forward to sharing this with our audience.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
If you were inspired by today's episode, then go ahead, watch this next episode. Promise it's worth it. And if you really enjoyed this last episode and you want to connect with the guest I had on today, make sure to leave a comment down below telling me why you would like an intro to this guest, and I'll make it happen.